Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. Today I'm talking about the 3 ways you might be shaming your teen and lowering their resilience and confidence, even if you don't realize it. Which, by the way, is totally okay. It's not a judgment thing. We are here to build awareness for change, because that's where it all starts, right? So, if you were raised in an environment where shaming, and I'm going to talk about what shaming actually means, then you might unconsciously be repeating that pattern, even if you're attempting to not redo it. And there is a couple impacts that I want you to be aware of that happen because of shame, so that you can have more awareness, not judgment, more awareness as you are parenting your teen to begin to truly break this cycle, which I know you absolutely want to do, if we just had the tools to do it, which we don't always have. So no problem. Let's do this, shall we? All right, my name is Allie Payne. I am a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach, one of only 70 people in Canada to hold both designations. I have been working specifically with parents of tweens and teens for the last 16 years to help them end the baffling blow-ups, painful disconnection, and stressful silences to build lasting relationships based on mutual respect, day-to-day connection, and open, honest relationships. Yes? Sound like something you want? Okay, let's do this. If you're watching on Instagram, I would love a follow. If you're watching on YouTube, I'd love a subscribe. Okay, so let's define shame. Okay, so shame is taking a mistake or a failure, something you did that someone perceives as wrong. Okay, and I'm going to put that in quotes because it is truly subjective. Yes, it's truly subjective. Something that you have done that someone else perceived as wrong or, quote, bad. And so you were on the receiving end of shame. Now, you're on the receiving end of shame because that's how it starts. You learn what shame is, because we all have shame. All of us have shame. Okay. So when you make this, I'm going to say mistake for lack of a better word. When you make this mistake, the message that you receive from someone else, generally at a young age, is that you as a person, you as a character are flawed, bad, wrong, not enough, unlovable, not smart enough, all of those things. So you didn't just make a mistake, like as in you tried, carrying a tray like a waitress would, and it had drinks and a plate on it, and you flipped it over on its head and go, okay, well, I tried that and it didn't work. Shame doesn't look at the behavior. Shame looks at you and places the result on your value and worth as a human being. Okay, so it translates the result of your effort, which someone deemed as bad or wrong, and it takes the result of that effort as bad or wrong and translates the result of that directly onto your perception of your value and worth as a human being. That is shame. And that is why it is so toxic and painful. Type in the comments yes if that definition, does that definition resonate with any of you? Now that's probably how you learned it, okay? Again, we're all human. I'm pretty sure if you're in a dog listening, hey. That's how we learned shame, was from, okay, yes, good. So I'm not the only one. Okay, yay, thank you. You learned it from someone else, maybe once, maybe it was as subtle, okay, and this is kind of, well, actually, so I said 3 ways in the beginning. This is maybe the 4th way. It's really subtle. It can be body language. Maybe, oh, look at how many of you are just like me. I love all of you. Thank you for being here. So if you were had that experience that the result of your effort was deemed by bad or wrong by someone else, it could be just a look. It could be like, you know what I mean? The parent scoff. Woo, we've all had the parent scoff. I have done the parent scoff. Hand up, eyes down. I have done the parent scoff. Okay. The whole, or what were you thinking? You know, because I'm frustrated and I am stressed out as a parent. And so I've done the like, or the eye roll or the gritted teeth. Like, oh my gosh, what are you like? I have done it. So shame can actually be perceived by my child, by your child, from kind of indirect comments and body language, even if you are not intending to send a shame message, right? Shame is very subtle and shame can be very overt. So now that we've defined shame, I want to talk for a minute about the result of shame, okay? So the result of shame, even if it is once and subtle, because unfortunately, as a parent, this is a giant pitfall that is it's not your fault, it's just one to be aware of, is that when your child is on the receiving end of shame, intentionally or otherwise, okay? This is not a place where we do parent shaming. No judgment here. So if you've done one of those very natural and human responses to something that your teenager, your tween, your child has done, and they perceive shame, what can happen in their brain, and this was all studied like it's been studied for a long time, but it was like quantified in 1989. C.R. Snyder studied this on shame and hopefulness, is that you can internalize that shame, like you begin to believe that in fact, when you tried or got whatever result you got, it is a direct reflection of the less than value and worth as a human. Even one time, if you believe that, it like chips away at your confidence, okay? And your resilience, which are kind of both part and parcel of what is required to try again, or even try at something else. So if you experienced shame, your brain, it may now be running a shame story, is what it's called technically, is a shame story. And they sound anything like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not tall enough, I have the wrong color hair, I have the wrong color eyes, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not handsome enough, I'm not muscular enough, I'm not, you name the enough. It's a not enough story, right? Type me in the comments if you got a shame story, or 50. Okay? I'm not something enough is what a shame story. Now, unfortunately, those shame stories, again, I love you. You're all my people. Thank you. Okay. So those shame stories, when met with continued criticism, and I don't mean minute by minute, day by day. I mean, it could be a subtle thing once a week, a subtle thing once a month. I'm talking over time, okay, with your child, with your tween, your teen, particularly when their brain is developing and they are just a giant hot mess anyway. That shame story is like, I know it's a cheesy metaphor, but please just go with me, okay? Go with me on it. It's a seed. And it plants and it grows. The shame story, it grows. And every leaf it grows is a different shame story, but it's all from the same root. You get more leaves on the shame freaking weed, right? And so it begins to grow. And as it grows, confidence goes down, resilience goes down. But here's the kicker, okay? The kicker of the last thing that goes down is hope. Now, hope is not hope is not a belief. Hope is not a feeling. Did you know that? Hope is not a feeling. Hopefulness or hopelessness, they are ways of thinking. They are belief. So in the face of shame that is met with, so to go back, you behave a certain way, you get a certain result, and it's met with a shame story, which is relating that bad or wrong, in quotes, result with your lack of value as a human being. And it grows. What ends up happening is you lack hope over time. So this can look like learned hopelessness. Hopelessness says, I don't have what it takes to be good enough to, like, I've literally just kind of like stopped trying. I shrink my world. I aim small because then I can't lose. That's hopelessness as studied, okay? Is I lack resilience. I lack confidence. I will aim small. I generally won't try anything that I don't know I can succeed at, which makes my world even smaller, okay? And the differentiator there is that, which I'm going to tell you, and I'll tell you in the end, okay? I'll tell you, okay, that's where I'm going. How do we fix it? Okay, first of all, I want to tell you, so I've talked to you about what shame is, and then what happens in the brain for shame. Here's 3 ways it might be showing up between you and your teen, okay? If you came from an authoritarian environment, which was very strict, very high accountability for behavior, very low allowance for emotions, very strict control, which was kind of parenting in the day. Really, that was sort of how parenting was done in previous generations. No shame, not doing that. And if you are using that kind of strict parenting because it worked for you, and so that's what you're using now, shame can show up in authoritarian parenting simply by focusing so much on the behavior, which authoritarian parenting, that's one of the markers of authoritarian parenting, and it's very behavior focused, not a lot of room for emotion. So when you're focusing a lot on your teenager's behavior, like when they backtalk to you and use saucy words or are rude, when they are not showing up for school, when they're lying, anything that is well outside of your value system, that behavior is instantly consequenced. Okay? That behavior is instantly, there's a consequence, like right now, because your teenager needs to know that is not how you raise them, and that's not going to be a slippery slope bagel falling down on your watch. So they are going to get back in line, and they're going to get back in line right now. That is authoritarian parenting. Now, the reason that authoritarian parenting can create shame is because it doesn't acknowledge the driving force behind all behavior, which is emotions. 100% of them come from emotions. Shame happens on an emotional level and roots itself in the intellect, in the way of thinking and seeing and all our filters. That's the crappy part about shame. So if you are raising your child in a strict environment because you want to make sure that they stay on the straight and narrow and they know what's right and they know what's wrong, that's how that shame is sewn in, is if when you're very focused on right, wrong, all very results-based, behavior-focused, there's probably a way that unconsciously you are repeating a shame cycle that you may have been raised in with your child. Okay, so that's the first way it might show up. Again, no judgment, 0. The second way it might show up is if you didn't like that form of parenting, authoritarian parenting, which most of us were raised in, and so you went 180 degrees the other direction, and kind of a version of gentle parenting, but you might have missed the exit, like you're like a couple miles past the exit. Shame can actually show up when you're doing your very best to be kind and be your teenager's cheerleader and not be so harsh with them and make room for some mistakes and all that. Here's the irony. Shame can show up because if they're not getting enough boundaries and structure at home, they're going to learn what's right and wrong the hard way, which is outside of the house. And that actually builds shame. So even though you're being nice because you don't want to be like super mean or heavy-handed with what you grew up in, so now you're kind of going the other direction, which is totally normal. The intention is often to be a cycle breaker, right? You want to change how you raise your teens compared to how you were raised. No shame to your parents either, that's fine. That I want to be I'm invested in my teenager knowing I love them, I'm here for them, and we don't need all those like harsh things. The thing is there's not enough structure. And so they go and they make what they don't realize are socially inappropriate, relationally inappropriate, or general behaviorally inappropriate behaviors outside of the home where shame is very prevalent. And they end up getting shamed by other people, experiencing shame from other people because they're doing something they had no idea was inappropriate or wrong because they haven't been corrected sufficiently at home in a loving way, because you're more afraid of, you don't want them to not like you. So you're more invested in being their friend. It all comes from fear, okay? Shame is installed outside of the home that way. They're going to hear it from a teacher. They're going to hear it from a coach. They're going to hear it from a friend. They're like, what are you thinking? Like that, like, they're going to get it from someone outside the home and build the shame story there. And then so it still happens. And then the third way that shame can show up in your parenting, again, is if you're just trying to break the cycle of whatever you got, you want to be the very best parent for your child. And so what you're doing is not the heavy authoritarian heavy-handedness. You're not doing the significant controls and punishments, but you are really making sure that your teenager becomes the best person they can be. And you're doing that by pointing out what they do wrong because you want them to improve or show them areas of improvement. So you are focused on what they're not doing. You're not seeing what they are doing. And you're doing it out of love because you want them to be the best person that you see them to be and you love them and know they can become. But it becomes very criticism oriented, criticism and correction based in your words. It's not consequence based. Okay, that's authoritarian. It's not consequence based, but it's very criticism and nitpicky because you want to make sure that, well, if you just did this better, you'd get a better grade. If you just did it this my way, you'd get a better. If you just washed the dishes this way, it wouldn't take so long. It's always pointing out what they need to do different or change, never acknowledging what they are doing. Shame is correlated with high levels of criticism. So whether they're getting it in the house or in my last example where you want to be kinder and nicer to your child and you're more worried about them liking you, they're going to get criticism outside the house. So it's really important that you understand that regardless of how you parent, authoritarian because it worked for your parents, so you're sticking with that. Whether you've gone all the other way, you want to cycle break and you've gone a little bit past gentle parenting and you're or a few miles down the road and you kind of want to be their friend. You just don't want them to not like you. You really don't want conflict, so you avoid it. Shame shows up outside the house that way. And then in the third way, shame shows up by you wanting them to be their best person, but your parenting is focused on criticism and correction. Shame constantly shows up because it's all about what they're not doing right. So those are the three ways that shame might be showing up in your parenting that you might not have been aware of, all because of how you were raised and lacking the understanding and the knowledge, which was not, you're not stupid, okay? It's that it's not been presented. No, we're not, you didn't miss it in school because it wasn't offered. So don't worry. There's no training manual for this. That's why I do this. Shame might be showing up inadvertently and unconsciously without you realizing it. Now, here's how you undo it, okay? Undoing shame is this. As opposed to the first definition I gave of shame, when your child makes an effort toward something and they get a result, okay? Instead of attaching that result, which you might deem as wrong or bad, to their character, that's what we're not going to do. We're going to be like, okay, result. How's that working? Or what do you think? Let's get less attached to the result, which often comes from you wanting you to fulfill your own emotional insecurity of being a good parent. So we judge and criticize the results we don't like and we don't want, because we need our children to know, no, not that. But it ends up installing shame. So what we do instead is, when there's a result that you don't like and you don't want, take a breath. Take a breath. I don't care if it's lying. You found vapes with in your teen's room in their backpack. They snuck out last night. They were late for. Take a breath. Take a breath. Because otherwise you're reacting, and reaction will almost always lead to some version of shaming. So when you take a breath, then you can not judge the result as much, and you can get curious about the result with your teen. So here's what I noticed. Let's talk about that. Here's what I noticed. What do you think about that? I noticed this. How'd that go for you? What do you think? Because when you get curious about a result, you're less likely to criticize it, even if you don't agree with it. And then you can say, I'm not loving that result. Do you see what I literally just did in my language? I'm not loving that result. I love you. Don't dig that result. I don't dig that outcome. How can we work on that for next time? Let's talk about like how are we gonna work on that? Or now you have to be careful of that if this is involving school, because the effort is what matters the most, and the effort is driven by emotional beliefs. So if shame is already there and you're still focusing on the effort, it's like continuing to pick the scab and wondering why the infection didn't go away. Sorry if that's a little messy for you, but that's true. So we want to look at the get curious about the emotions that are driving the behavior. And then we want to look at, and if that is working, okay, then we look at the effort, not necessarily the outcome. Okay. So this was what you were trying to do. Oh, okay. I get it. So this is what happened. So maybe there's something they can learn. Maybe they just need extra mentorship or support. But we take the result. And what happens in that moment of failure, because we all know what that is. We all know when you did something that you are deeming as wrong or bad, and you're desperately hoping your parent doesn't jump on that train because you're already running down the tracks. I'm a failure. I suck. What science has shown us is, in the moment of humiliation, so that moment where your teen is judging they are a failure, your teen, tween, young adult is judging that they are a failure. When that moment of humiliation is met with compassion and grace, as in, dude, that sucks. Yeah, okay, let's talk about it. That would be hard. All right, had an accident in the car. We know you're okay. Everyone's okay. Let's talk about it. When that moment of humiliation is met with compassion and grace, that is how you decrease shame. That is where your teenage, tween, teen, young adult learns that their effort may or may not have been involved in the result, because sometimes we don't always have a direct line, and that their lack of result, for lack of a better word, the lack of result, or the result you didn't like, is something that they can shift and change. They have power over it. That one result does not have power over them, because it has no correlation to their value as a human being. It has no correlation to their intelligence. It has correlation perhaps to their level of mastery, but that's about it. So it's through compassion and curiosity and knowing how to have those conversations that we reduce shame stories, so our children build greater confidence, greater resilience. And I'm not saying we don't have boundaries or consequences. Yeah, but it's the way we approach it. Okay. There's a couple questions here, so I'm just going to go back. How do you feel that balance of correcting without shaming, not bringing their friend, yet afraid to lose them? Oh, not being their friend. Oh, and your role as a parent. Oh yeah. So that's a great question, because generally that's the question that goes, how do I not be an authoritarian parent, but how do I not be permissive? Well, that's all I do. That's all I talk about. So if you want the actual direct answers to that, that's a long answer, it comes from boundaries, and understanding what a boundary actually is, because I will guarantee you 100% it's not what you were taught. Then you tap my name on Instagram and go to the link in my profile and watch my free masterclass. I actually explain the whole thing in there. So that's where I would start. Or you can check on my website, alliepayne.com, and right at the top there's a big pink banner. Tap that. The answer to that is in that free masterclass. What does it sound like when you find a vape? Same thing. Okay, so I found this in your room, and I'd like to hear from you. Don't say let's talk about it, because what that means is I'm about to lecture you. They're not interested. You get calm. Remember I said take a breath. You get calm. You get curious. Then you get compassionate. And then you decide what the next best move is, which might, but if you don't know what's going on and you're making up a story and you're trying to just shut that down right now, that's building shame. And it's also removing emotional safety. They're not going to talk to you about anything. Take focus away from them to stick to the result. Yes. Hard for me. I never had those type of conversations. Yes, I didn't as well. It's been very difficult for me to separate who my child is from the results of their behavior, to lift them up as a person, not blow smoke up their butt, but help them build resilience and confidence to know that mistakes are a necessary part of learning mastery toward anything. Mistakes are necessary. So mistakes are going to happen. And it is what it is. I'll be here. I'm here. I'm your safe place. I can't rescue them from any natural consequences, but I'm here. Like, you are not your mistakes. That's essentially how we're going to undo the shame story here. Yeah, your parents were not equipped with this. Okay, but we're not going to take points off your parents here. Our parents did not have the psychological studies, the longitudinal research that we have now. There wasn't the psychology. They didn't have that. Okay, so they were doing the best they could. Okay. Yeah, well, if you say, why were you, then that's a fair question. If you don't have permission to be in their room, then you are going to need to answer that. And there might be a breach of trust. Yeah, because you can't call them on something that they're hiding from you if you were also doing something that you didn't have permission to do. So that's a two-way conversation. It's a two-way conversation. It's a tough one. All right. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you want more information on this, if you want to remove shame from your relationship with your teenager, remove it, or do your very best to decrease it. Let's say that, because we're not ever going to remove it. Please tap my name, and then the link in my profile there's my free masterclass where I'm breaking all this down. It's all in there. And if you have questions, just type shame in the comments once I get this posted, and I'll get you the link and other resources that I can help you with. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm so grateful for you. I hope you're starting an amazing summer after a holiday weekend, and I will see you again next week. Bye.